Hey YouTube, how's it going? My name is Kevin, also known as Phoenix, and today I'm going to be giving you all my top 10 most anticipated cards from the new set Innistrad Midnight Hunt. And these cards are going to be more geared towards standard. I know most of my previous content has always been modern, but I've always really gotten my roots into Magic with standard, so I kind of want to branch out the channel a little bit, you know, include a little bit of standard, a little bit of modern, and if the format ever gets revived, maybe even some Pioneer in the future. But for now, I want to go over my top 10 Innistrad Midnight Hunt anticipated cards for standard, and yeah, let's get into the video. At number 10, we have all of the slow lands. I've heard mixed opinion on these. I've heard some people say that they really like them. I've heard some people say that they really don't like them. But basically the lands read, and I'll use Haunted Ridge as an example. Haunted Ridge enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. So basically they're the exact opposite of the fast lands. Whenever we hit 2 or more other lands, that is when they start to come in untapped, and pretty much at that point we're getting OG duels at that point. So in your mid to late game, we're basically playing these cards, they're playing these lands, they're coming in untapped, and in a format that is a bit slower compared to modern, I feel like these lands are definitely going to be getting a lot more value. So I'm putting the slow lands at number 10. I think they're going to be very good, especially in your 2 to 3 color decks. So I definitely would not sleep on any of the slow lands, and if you could, pick up a playset of every one of them. At number 9, we have Vampire Social Elite. Now, Vampire Social Elite reads, it is a 2 mana, Rakdos colors. It is a vampire noble creature with menace. When this card enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. As long as an opponent has lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So for me, this is kind of a weird Thalia's Lieutenant from the Humans deck in Modern, and it basically has Spectacle tagged onto it, so you get these effects if your opponent has lost life this turn. I think this deck, or at least this card, will be very good in standard, notably if Vampires is a good deck in the format. Having the Vampire type is definitely critical, obviously, because it works with Vampires, but being a 2 mana 2/2 with Menace on its own is not bad. So get some +1/+1 counters on this card and being able to swing, making it a little bit harder to block. Definitely fits in well with the go wide type of aggro strategy that you can potentially do with Vampires. So yeah, I'm definitely happy at putting this card at my number 9 slot. At number 8, we have our first flip card. We have Death Bonnet Sprout. Now, Death Bonnet Sprout reads, it is a 1 green creature fungus. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. Then, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, transform Death Bonnet Sprout. It is a 1/1, and the transformed version is Death Bonnet Hulk. It is a creature fungus horror, and it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile a card from a graveyard, not your graveyard, but a graveyard. If a creature card was exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Death Bonnet Hulk, and it is a 3/3. So the reason why I like this card so much is that it's honestly just a very good, clean 1 mana value creature that if your opponent does not answer it, then it just gets bigger. If they do answer it, well, you just force them to have the removal early. Also, it fits in really well with some additional cards that I'm going to be mentioning on further down the road, but definitely seems like a very good 1 mana 1/1 fueling your graveyard if you're a graveyard deck and just transforming into a bigger creature later on and continuing to grow. Kind of gives me some Scavenger Ooze type of feelings with this card, so definitely happy at putting it at number 8, and I think it could fit into any mono green stompy deck, maybe a Gruul aggro deck. Think there's definitely going to be a lot of homes for this type of card. At number 7, we have Smoldering Egg. Now, Smoldering Egg is a 2 mana creature dragon egg. It has Defender, it is a 0/4, and it has, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a number of Ember counters on Smoldering Egg equal to the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Then, if Smoldering Egg has 7 or more Ember counters on it, remove them and transform Smoldering Egg, and it will transport into Azimuth Dragon, which is of course a dragon, has flying, it is a 4/4, and it has whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Azimuth Dragon deals 2 damage to any target. So basically you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to shock something for free. Now this card definitely kind of reminds me of Thing in the Ice. Some people are familiar with that card, but if you're not, basically the idea with Thing in the Ice is you play a creature that typically isn't good on its own, but whenever you flip it or you transform it, then all of a sudden it becomes this huge threat, and that is typically going to win you the game. Now Smoldering Egg I think fits really well into like an Izzet shell where you're casting a lot of instant sorceries, you're able to flip it, and then you're able to protect your dragon or your egg with a bunch of counter magic, and you are rewarded for doing so by being able to deal 2 damage to a creature, or either that or your opponent's life total directly. Now the problem that I think this card does have is that the Izzet Dragons deck, or the Izzet control deck that is kind of already around in standard, isn't losing that many cards, and a lot of the core is still there for the deck, so it will have to be competing with that deck. I don't know if it would just slide right on in, or maybe it's kind of its own deck entirely, but I definitely think the Smoldering Egg card is very unique, very interesting, and I look forward to at least play testing it in the near future. At number 6, we have Tovolar, Dire Overlord. Now this card I'm just going to kind of group in together with Werewolves, because I'm super excited for Werewolves, because I think they actually may be playable in standard, but it's a little hard to say. A lot of them have some really good text. I'm just using Tovolar as an example of a werewolf creature that has good text on it. Obviously I've seen, Arlen the Planeswalker, I think she's really good, and but generally there's so many cards I was excited for that I'm just going to put one werewolf in for here, and Tovolar is actually, I think, a good exception of a werewolf card that works obviously in a werewolf deck. However, it's also just a good Gruul creature, so if you just want to do Gruul aggro, I don't think you'll have any problems with just sliding this one in. Tovolar, Dire Overlord is a 3 mana, 1 green, 1 red, 1 generic, legendary creature, human werewolf. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more wolves and or werewolves, it becomes night. Then transform any number of human or werewolves you control. It flips into Tovolar, the Midnight Scourge. Whenever a wolf or werewolf you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And it also has Gruul mana and X. Target wolf or werewolf you control gets +X/+0 and gains trample until the end of turn, and it has Nightbound. So the reason why I think this card is good in its own right is because you play it, and if it connects, you're just going to keep on dealing combat damage, and it doesn't matter if your opponent flips it to day or night, you still get the draw a card effect. And the green red X, give target, you can target itself, pump it up a little bit, give it trample. But what I really like about this is you connect with it, you draw a card. It's just a very good self-drawing engine on a body that is very relevant. 3 mana for a 3/3. Has this really good line of text. If you happen to have any other werewolves in your deck that just happen to fit in the Gruul colors that also are just playable in its own right in the deck, that obviously is just extra mileage. So the big thing that I do want to mention about the werewolf decks that I am worried about is the day-bound, night-bound mechanic. And I think what's just going to come down to is how easily in standard it is for your opponent to control this, and how many cards really care about, like, okay, I really want the night-bound side and not the day-bound side. I'm very hesitant to just say, oh, the deck's going to be super good or it's going to be super bad. So this is the one that I am looking forward to the most, and I do look forward to playtesting a lot of the werewolf cards myself. At number 5, we have Memory Dolge. Now, I didn't include too many blue cards in my list, so I definitely wanted to get a good one here, and I really do like Memory Dolge. So, Memory Dolge is an instant speed, 4 mana, 2 blue, 2 generic. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X was the amount of mana spent to cast a spell. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and it has flashback for 7 mana, 2 blue, and 5 generic. Now, in a control deck, consistency has always been like the big thing, right? Where, okay, well, we have all the answers, we have the way to win, we just have to have the right answer at the right time. Well, in a control deck, I feel like this is very good because on the front end, you're just, instant speed whenever your opponent hasn't done anything, or like you don't have to react and you have the 4 mana floating. You just cast this at the end of the turn, look at the top 4 cards, put the 2 most relevant into your hand. Later on down the line, when it's super late game and you're both in top deck mode, just flashbacking this from your graveyard, looking at the top 7 and putting 2 into your hand, that's almost guaranteeing you at least some form of gas, some way to end the game, or at least lock your opponent out even more. Definitely high up on my list at number 5, and I look forward to playtesting around with this card as well. Moving on to number 4, we're going to start getting to cards that really get me excited for this set, and I'm super hyped to be able to jam them into a deck and try them out. And we're going to start off at number 4 with Consuming Blob. So Consuming Blob is a double green, 3 generic, 5 mana total, creature ooze. Consuming Blob's power is equal to the number of card types among cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that plus 1. Basically Tarmogoyf, but it only counts your graveyard. At the beginning of your end step, create a green ooze creature token with the same ability except not creating the ooze at the end step. So the reason why I like this card is because I think it could be really cool in maybe a Gruul, or what I'm going to be trying out is a Jund deck where you are able to use some hand hate disruption spells, clear the battlefield, you're both like running low on resource, jamming a Consuming Blob, and if your opponent doesn't have the answer, this thing is going to get out of control very fast. Not only that, but having it happen at the end step, if you can play this card when your opponent is tapped out, you're at least guaranteed to get another Consuming Blob token. So they have to be able to deal with both of them, or at least deal with one, and you still are left with the additional. So I think Consuming Blob is going to be a very interesting card. I don't know, maybe it's more playable in my heart than it actually is, but I do think that Consuming Blob is a very interesting card, and I really want to jam it. So obviously I've been a big Tarmogoyf fan for a while, as I've been playing it a lot in Modern, but definitely will be playing a lot of Consuming Blob, and I have it at my number 4. Coming in at number 3, we have Dire Strain Rampage. For 1 green, 1 red, 1 generic, we have a sorcery that can destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. If a land was destroyed this way, its controller may search their library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library. Otherwise, its controller may search their libraries for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and it has splashback for 5. Now, the reason why I like this card so much is because it kind of serves two purposes. The first purpose that I thought of is it's a Gruul ramp spell. You target your own land, you get 2 basic lands out of your own type, and with Consuming Blob that I mentioned earlier, you now have sorcery and land in your own graveyard. But the really cool thing about this is that it serves 2 purposes. In the, on your turn 3, you can easily just ramp yourself into some more mana, or if it's later in the game and you just happen to top deck this card, it also can just, when lands aren't really the biggest worry anymore, you both have tons of lands out on the field, you can just destroy an opponent's enchantment, or maybe a critical land they have, or an artifact. Very good, just general purpose, all around well-rounded card. And attaching flashback to it definitely puts the icing on the cake for me, because just being able to recur more value out of your graveyard, just top notch. Love this card, definitely look forward to playing it. At number 2, we have Bloodthirsty Adversary. Now, Bloodthirsty Adversary is 2 mana, 1 red, 1 generic, a vampire creature. It has haste, it is a 2/2. When Bloodthirsty Adversary enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 generic and a red any number of times. When you pay this cost 1 or more times, put that many +1/+1 counters on Bloodthirsty Adversary. Then exile up to that many target instants and or sorcery cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard and copy them. You may cast any number of copies without paying their mana cost. Now, the reason why I like this card is because, in a weird way, if you look at it, this is just Snapcaster Mage, like a very weird red Snapcaster Mage. Just, on the low end, it's a 2 mana 2/2 haste creature, which is perfectly fine with a relevant creature type of vampire. It's already kind of playable. Now, attaching in the mid game or late game, you can pay additional mana get a counter on it, and also cast something from your graveyard that's relevant. If this thing had flash, it would be insane, but it doesn't. And even without flash, just being able to cast something with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard without having to pay its mana cost, definitely high up in my book. I think this is going to be a highly played card, so I definitely recommend picking up your playset copies of this card. And yeah, just an amazing card all around. Look forward to seeing it in Standard. At number 1, we have the cream of the crop. The most highly anticipated card for me to come out of the Innistrad Midnight Hunt set in Standard is going to be Wrenn 7. Double green, 3 generic, legendary planeswalker, +1. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all land cards revealed this way into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. 0, we have put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. -3, we have create a green treefolk creature token with reach. This creature's power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control. And finally at -8, we have return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Now the thing that I love the most about this card is that it has a lot of text on it, and it's all relevant text. Now the +1 is very good for multiple reasons. Having to, if you are a graveyard deck or just a ramp deck in general, being able to put multiple lands into your hand and fuel your graveyard at the same time on a plus ability is a very good thing to have on a planeswalker. Not only that, but being able to just for no loyalty whatsoever, just straight up 0, put all of the lands that you have +1 to into onto the battlefield tapped is just so much ramp into your deck. And I feel like the more sets that we get, if we potentially get more and more relevant lands, that there could potentially be another lands deck in Standard, which may or may not be a good thing depending on how strong it is. But this is definitely some insane synergy that we have that is just working within the same card. And also the -3, creating a treefolk where its power and toughness is equal to the lands you control. It does not have any protection on the creature. However, in a situation where you can maybe -3 this twice, you're looking at some game-ending power already. Like, these treefolks could get massive. They can end games on their own, or just protect the Wrenn 7, and you can just keep, using abilities over and over and over again. Works really well with the Dire Strain Rampage. Works really well with the Consuming Blob. So many cards that synergize with this. I definitely am looking forward to playing 4 of these in my deck, and I'm completely blown away. At first I didn't think it was going to be that good, but the more and more I read this card, it easily became my most highly anticipated card for the new Standard set. And that's going to do it for this video, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. And be sure to tell me, did you like this list, or did you think there were some other really cool cards that I failed to mention? Also, if you did enjoy this type of content, be sure to check out the Gamers Haunt YouTube channel that I will provide a link to down below. It should also be appearing somewhere on the screen at some point. I also make content over there on that channel as well, so be sure to go over there, give them a subscribe, and check out my content over there. I'll be posting 5 decks that I think will be really cool to play in the next upcoming Standard post-rotation. So yeah, again, be sure to go check them out, and I'll see you all next time.